let's move now to my way too early 2023 running back rankings. I'll go through about 20 of them because, again, a lot of free agents. In particular, the running back class has some very intriguing storylines and free agents this offseason. So we'll hit on those at the end. But let's rip through my rankings here. Christian McCaffrey, Austin Ekeler, Derrick Henry, my top three in that order. McCaffrey does have some question marks. Will he coexist well if Trey Lance does return as the starter, who did not show much of a propensity to throw it to the running back position? We will see. But, man, he has over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns in less than half of a season since coming over to San Fran. What a beautiful fit with Kyle Shanahan, a brilliant player with a brilliant play caller. Don't need to overthink it. He's my number one running back and number one overall player as of right now. If I was drafting today, Christian McCaffrey. Austin Ekeler not far behind him, though. Yet another brilliant season. He has 38 touchdowns across his last 2 years. The next closest guy is 22. An elite scorer at the position, was routinely a running back one throughout the year, finishing with a bang, 20 and 28 standard points. You mix in the half PPR, we got 30 points there as the running back one in your fantasy championships. Big season from Austin Ekeler here, used to perfection in an explosive offense. Not much else needs to be said. Now, Henry returned from that 2021 injury quite well, just exploding. It looked a little sketchy to begin the year, 8 and 9 points. Running back 33, 26, and then bam, 23, 22, 26, 15, 35, 24, 8, 24, 13, 5, 19, 24, and 18 points, routinely finishing in the top 5 running backs. Just an absolute steamrolling tank that continues to defy age. This is the type of guy, he'll be a little bit older, so big risk entering the season because we know that cliff at 30 for the running back position, but he'll be about 28, 29 throughout the season. I'm not too worried about this guy. He's built like such a tank that I don't know the age will necessarily matter and make him more injury prone. Then we move on to Jonathan Taylor, tier 2. So those first three are the guys that I continue to remain locked into my half PPR first round. But next year, we'll talk about when we get to receivers. I've always been a bell cow breeder. I still have 5 guys in my fringe first round here at the running back position, but I only consider that first 3, again, McCaffrey, Ekeler, Henry, as you must take these guys in round 1. There's no debating it otherwise. Then we move into tier 2, and these are still my running back ones, but more so the round 2 guys that I consider. And Jonathan Taylor, a fringe first rounder, the next guy on the list, the number 1 consensus guy entering the year, obviously one of the biggest disappointments in fantasy, but they are bound for a top 3 pick. Maybe they do get one of the big 2 rookie QBs coming in. Either way, you got to imagine they make a huge upgrade there. Certainly, it's not going to be worse play calling than Jeff Saturday coming in. So getting fully healthy, I mean, I am willing to look past the sickening year with awful quarterback play, horrendous line play. They have a ton of holes they need to fix here for Jonathan Taylor to reemerge, but I am very confident. The few times they really did establish him and get him going was that one streak. It started with the Raiders game, 22 carries, 20 and 21. He finished with 23, 15, 17, and then 12 points, was a top 12 running back for 3 of those 4 weeks. And that's really the only time he had that meaningful volume at full health. And then he got hurt again, and it was just a lost year for Taylor. But with better quarterback play, ideally a fresh, young offensive mind coming in, I'm a big fan of Taylor. Then we move on to one of our biggest stories of the offseason will be Saquon Barkley at 5. Number 7, Tony Pollard, also a free agent. Man, if any of them land with the Chiefs, you could have them in the conversation for number 1 overall, not just at running back, but the entire big board if they land there. Right in sandwich in between those 2 very, very exciting free agents is Nick Chubb, given Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson are both free agents this offseason. I do imagine Kevin Stefanski will replace them. If both those guys end up gone, whether it's Jerome Ford, who looked very impressive this preseason, or they make a higher investment in the draft or free agency pool, I do think Nick Chubb will have a running back mate. That's just how Stefanski runs the system. But, man, there's a slight chance, one of the best pure runners we've ever seen gets this entire backfield to himself, gets a full offseason to meld with Deshaun Watson. So that's why I have Nick Chubb as high as 6, despite him sputtering at the end. Don't forget how damn good he was. He was the running back 1 in fantasy for 2/3 of the year. Just filthy all year. So I can imagine a world where Nick Chubb approaches the number 1 running backs, especially if he can inherit some receiving work should Kareem Hunt leave. And then Ramondre Stevenson clocking in at 8. Now, this ranking does assume Damian Harris, an unrestricted free agent, is gone. We just saw that, look no further than last week, Harris played and actually out-carried Ramondre last week. So if Harris returns, if they make a big investment at the running back position, should Harris leave, I don't know that I can keep Ramondre as a fringe top 10 guy. But as of right now, we saw him play most of the season without Damian Harris. And Ramondre was an absolute monster for those spans. Great receiving. If you look at PFF's grades, receiving, running, efficiency metrics, any type of metric you want to toss out there, this guy was an absolute monster. 18, 11, 19, 23, 20, 18, 15, 11, 16, 11, 24 points. I mean, almost all of those games falling in your top 12 running backs from week 3 through week 12. Just an absolute monster. Only was hindered when Damian Harris was in the lineup. So I could see Ramondre Stevenson, who finishes the running back 12 in fantasy, but definitely, actually, that was in standard too. So if you mix in receptions, which he was towards the top of the league in receptions, bumps up to running back 10. But again, if he gets that whole backfield to himself all year, could be a monster. Then as you see, Joe Mixon with Samaje Perine, also a free agent coming into the year, maybe more receiving work coming for him. We just, what you're getting to Mixon. It's a locked-in top 10 guy, always solid. And then rounding out my top 10 is Kenneth Walker. What an absolute monster this guy is. So many glimpses of being the next big thing. If not him, obviously Breece Hall, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But Kenneth Walker had that stretch run where he took over as the starter against New Orleans and never looked back. Running back, he had 15 points, 18 points, 29, 12, 26, 10, 16, 10, 12, and 15 across his healthy games as the starter. So double digits in all of them. I mean, that's very impressive for a rookie on an offense that should only continue to ascend here. So big fan here of Kenneth Walker moving forward. I think he'll only get better. I think the Seahawks will only get better. Another team that could stand for a big quarterback upgrade. And then you move into tier 3, and it's hard to not have Josh Jacobs right in this locked in running back 1 tier. I love the player. Also an unrestricted free agent, though, with less of the pass catching chops that Tony Pollard and, of course, Saquon Barkley bring to the table. So he's definitely a little bit more landing spot dependent than the other two. I think any team that goes out and pays a big bag to get Barkley or Pollard is clearly going to be using them with very big intentions. Whereas Josh Jacobs does not bring quite that skill set, but man, he is so damn good. What an absolute warrior of a year he has had. So I could not keep him outside of my top 12 running backs. The more I think about him, he definitely belongs in this tier, maybe even ahead of Ramondre. What a season. The fantasy MVP, I would say, of 2022, given where you drafted him and where he finished as the running back 3 this year. 18.5 points per game behind only McCaffrey and Ekeler. What an absolute beastly season. Maybe he returns to the Raiders after what he did, which would be a great spot. Clearly became a workhorse, changed the philosophy there for Josh McDaniels. And you round out my top 17 or so here, the remaining fringe RB1s, elite running back 2s. These are the guys you're looking at in round 3 or so as great investments. Dalvin Cook at 12. It was a good fit, not quite the fit I expected with Kevin Stefanski. Expected a lot more screens and Todd Gurley-esque usage. Didn't quite come to fruition, but still played all the games for the first time in his career. Nice season here for Dalvin Cook. Good fit. Think he's a great spot. And then Travis Etienne, man, what a breakout. After we had James Robinson traded, he had a great rest of his year. Did suffer a little bit of an injury and didn't fully seem to regain his health for a couple weeks after that. But when we saw him looking fully healthy and explosive, 13, 12, 18, 24, 26 points, gets hurt, and then ultimately rounds out the season, though, with a few big ones, 13 and 22 points, running back 5 in your fantasy championships. So Travis Etienne, I just think this Jags team continues to ascend, tied to that Trevor Lawrence offense I was just raving about. I think Travis Etienne. The one thing missing is the pass catching work, which is what his strength was coming in. So once that ideally gets added to his plate, the ceiling is the limit. Could see a top 5 finish for Travis Etienne in 2023. You got Aaron Jones, running back 14. He'll probably finish at running back 9, 10, but it will be, as we saw this year, a little bit frustrating, a little bit maddening. He'll have a 35-point day and an 8 to 9-point day. A.J. Dillon in particular really came down on the stretch here. So a little lower on Aaron Jones than I typically am. Big question for the offseason. Running back 15 here, Breece Hall suffered an ACL tear, a little bit of meniscus damage as well. If we know he's fully cleared, fully healthy, and ready to go, he was looking like maybe a top 4 running back, top 2 running back potentially in the NFL. All the athleticism in the world that everybody raved about coming into the year was translating on the field to perfection, the pass catching chops, everything. So Breece Hall, definitely one of the biggest storylines of the offseason. What type of shape's he going to be in? How's he going to look? But man, I'll be going back to that well, no doubt about it. It was a heartbreak, maybe the most heartbreaking injury of 2022. But as long as he's good to go entering the 2023 season, I mean, ACLs these days, it's like nothing. So yes, added risk with the injury, potentially re-aggravating it, but I love the player. The line is beastly. I want to see what they do at quarterback. It sounds like they're committed to Zach Wilson, which just is absolutely moronic. I think that's coach speak. See if they can get some type of deal for him. But Breece Hall, right now, top 15 without knowing his health, but could easily find himself in my top 7 running backs by the time this rolls around. James Conner just continues, after a disappointing start to the year, ultimately finishes in the top 15 with running back points per game. Missed a few games there, but averaged 13.6 points per game. Really came out down the stretch here with Kyler Murray hurt. And that's where, maybe it's a good thing for him if Kyler Murray is ultimately going to miss some time in 2023, because he just feasts James Conner, whether it's Colt McCoy, David Blau, 20, 22, 20, 17, 22 again. The guy went berserk ever since Kyler Murray has been removed from the lineup. 1 touchdown. He has scored in 7 straight weeks, 7 touchdowns across those 6 weeks to close out 2022 here for James Conner. Back to that dynamo that he was the year before. So right back in my top 20 running backs, maybe a little too low on Conner. These guys kind of round out. And then Najee Harris, a first rounder nearly everywhere last year, a guy I faded hard. I'll go back to the well, though. I do think that foot injury really took a big toll on him. And even still, well over 80% of his games finished into the double-digit fantasy points. The big thing was the receiving work just was lacking all year compared to what we saw the year prior. And hopefully they get a coordinator that capitalizes that. Najee is a great pass-catching back. I know he's not the most explosive, elusive, athletic guy, but he is just so solid in every facet of the game. Churns, gets it done, good touchdown scorer, good nose for the end zone. I think he could be in it for a big rebound, especially should they get rid of Matt Canada, that terrible offensive coordinator there. And I'll round out, 25 running backs is kind of where I'll cut this before chatting through a few of the must-watches. But Javonte Williams, right at 18, similar to Breece Hall, but an even worse injury with a torn ACL, torn LCL, and then some other damage going on in his knee. What an absolute horse, though. He's already been talking about how he's hitting his rehab as hard as you would ever expect. Looking great. He's off crutches for a while now. So I expect Javonte Williams to hopefully rebound, but can't rank him too high with the injury questions, with the offense questions. But still, this just goes to show how much I love the player. Melvin Gordon, obviously gone at this point. So if they're going to make Latavius Murray a workhorse down the stretch, maybe Williams can just reemerge as a monster. DeAndre Swift, I know many of you puke seeing him in my top 20, but Jamal Williams is a free agent. Now, I do think he's such a Dan Campbell's guy that I expect Williams will be back with the Lions, but what if he's not? That's where DeAndre Swift would creep into your top 10 potentially. So that's why I have him here at 19. So damn explosive, so maddening, his inconsistent usage, especially as a pass catcher where he is just such a beast. Why is Justin Jackson taking some of those snaps? I do not know. But 26 points in your fantasy championships goes to remind you how damn good this guy can be, even on only 15 touches. So I really like DeAndre Swift to kind of put it together in 2023 and be a big rebound, bounce back candidate. Alvin Kamara, I don't know what to do with. Rounds up my top 20. I'm hoping they have a new play caller and quarterback, just anything. That he ran less than 50% of their routes in multiple weeks this year. And he is an elite pass catcher, maybe the best pass catching back we've seen across the last 5 years. And he's getting out-targeted by Dwayne Washington and crap. David Johnson, the corpse of David Johnson. Plus, he's got a suspension looming. So 20 felt about right, but honestly, maybe even a little too generous here with Kamara. A lot of risk coming in the offseason off of a humongous bust of a year. But round 4 or 5, there's every shot, similar to DeAndre Swift, that he could rebound in a major way. Now, Cam Akers had a huge end to his 2022 season. And man, I do think this officially shows him fully over that Achilles injury, which usually takes 2-3 years. Usually really takes a lifetime to recover from. Very rarely have we ever seen running backs. Only Donta Foreman in recent history has recovered from that torn Achilles. But Cam Akers down the stretch here, 19, 9, 12, 34, and 14 fantasy points to close out 2022. The team really committing to him to see what they had in him, and he rewarded him. So he's got one more year on his rookie deal. Maybe this is like a final tryout for him. Could he be our back of the future situation? Big fan of Cam Akers, though, entering next year in an offense that, yes, obviously a hugely disappointing year. Need to see some significant line upgrades across the board. But I do still think this Rams team has immense upside. They're just a year removed from winning a Super Bowl as a top 5 offense in the league. McVay, always in an offense I want to tie myself to. Dobbins, obviously getting into full health will be huge for him. He's looked really good to close the rest. And I still think he's missing a gear. Like if he finds that old gear he used to have, given the vision, we're seeing all the traits but that last gear. He could be huge down the stretch. Zeke maybe has Pollard gone next year. Everybody hates on Zeke. He just continues to churn out top 10 running back seasons. Beast. Dameon Pierce, what a year he had as well. I do hate the Texans, but man, he is a talent. And Kareem Hunt, a free agent. And that kind of transitions us nicely into the must-watch offseason. I mean, Kareem Hunt could be a top 12 running back, depending where he lands. We also have free agents in David Montgomery, Miles Sanders, James Cook, a huge must-watch, given Devin Singletary is a free agent. He might become the featured back. There's a chance I'm ranking James Cook in my top 12 running backs if Devin Singletary is gone. We know Zach Moss is gone. If they make no big moves and they don't re-sign Singletary, I think James Cook would be a fringe top 12 running back next year. So definitely a huge must-watch entering the offseason. And then similarly, as like the quarterback position, we talked about free agents. We've already kind of hit upon the big ones. Barkley, Jacobs, Tony Pollard, top 12 running backs, probably regardless of where they land. But then you also have Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, David Montgomery, potential top 20 running backs on their landing spot. And even after them, Damian Harris, Jeff Wilson, Jamal Williams, Donta Foreman, Penny, Madison, Singletary, Pirine, like McKinnon. These guys, when they get work that have just consistently performed, all free agents. So a lot of intriguing moving parts at the running back position. And obviously huge implications for guys like Chubb, Stevenson, Swift, Zeke, James Cook, as we've talked about, given this free agent pool. So that's kind of the must watch. We mentioned Breece Hall, Javonte Williams with the health, suspension for Alvin Kamara. And the last must watch of the running back I want to toss out there, Bijan Robinson, a rookie running back. I'm not going to dive into too many rookies in this show, but this is the next big thing at the position, folks. Bijan Robinson. Rumors that the Eagles are potentially interested. I mean, wherever he lands, he's probably going to be a top 12 running back. But if he lands in a spot like the Eagles, the Chiefs, like these crazy offenses, the sky would be the absolute limit. So that's the last must watch. Find where this running back goes. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments. Check out some more videos and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.